The school bell rang loudly, cutting through the noise of chattering students. The hallway was filled with people rushing to class, their backpacks bouncing on their shoulders. Some were laughing, others were shouting across the room. Lockers slammed open and shut as students hurried to grab their books. It was just another typical morning at Lincoln High School. But for Amara, it was more than just noise. It felt like a storm was coming. She walked slowly down the hall, clutching her notebook to her chest. Her eyes were down, not wanting to make eye contact with anyone. Her shoes were worn, and her uniform was a little too big. Amara was a quiet girl, someone who didn't like drawing attention to herself. Her dark skin was smooth, and her hair was tied neatly into braids. Everything about her seemed calm and composed, yet there was an unspoken tension that seemed to follow her. It was her first day at Lincoln High School. She had just moved to this new city with her father. She didn't know anyone here, and she wasn't sure if anyone would want to know her. At first, everything seemed fine. She found her classroom and quietly took a seat in the back row. But as soon as the teacher introduced her to the class, Amara could feel eyes on her. She could feel the whispers before anyone even said a word. The teacher smiled and said, "Class, this is Amara. She just moved here, so please make her feel welcome." But as the words left the teacher's mouth, Amara felt a chill. She could hear the whispers beginning, the sneers from the other students. She knew what was coming. One of the girls in the front row, with bright red hair and a smug look on her face, turned to her friend and said loud enough for Amara to hear, "Great, another weirdo in the class." Amara didn't react. She didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the notebook in front of her. The whispers continued. At lunch, Amara sat alone at a corner table in the cafeteria. She opened her lunchbox, pulling out a simple sandwich and an apple. It was nothing special, but it was enough for her. Around her, the noise of laughter and conversation filled the air. Students walked past in groups, talking about their plans, their friends, and their weekends. Some stopped to glance at Amara, but no one came to sit with her. Her eyes were down, focused on her lunch, but she felt the stares, the sharp glances. She could feel the weight of the room on her shoulders. Then, just as she took a bite, she heard a voice. "Hey, weird girl, what's that? A sandwich? Don't you have anything better than that?" It was Sasha, a girl who seemed to be the leader of a group of popular students. She stood in front of Amara's table with a smirk on her face, her friends laughing behind her. Amara didn't answer. She simply looked up for a brief moment, meeting Sasha's eyes. But instead of feeling fear, Amara felt a calm that seemed out of place. Sasha wasn't used to silence. She was used to getting reactions. When she didn't get one, her face twisted into a frown. "Don't just stare, answer me," Sasha snapped. But Amara didn't say anything. She picked up her sandwich and took another bite. She refused to give in to the bullies. Sasha and her friends stared at her for a moment, then rolled their eyes and walked off. Amara stayed seated, her hands shaking only slightly. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She simply went back to eating. After lunch, Amara walked to her next class. As she passed through the crowded hallways, she noticed the same looks, the same whispers. This time, one of the girls in the hallway bumped into her on purpose. Amara stumbled slightly, but quickly caught herself. "Oops," the girl said with a sly smile. "Didn't see you there." Again, Amara didn't respond. She simply kept walking. But as she walked into the classroom, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. At home, Amara entered the small apartment she shared with her father. The place was quiet. Her father, a tall and strong man, was sitting at the kitchen table, working on his laptop. He looked up when he saw Amara. "How was your first day?" he asked with a smile, but there was concern in his eyes. Amara hesitated. She didn't want to worry him. "It was fine," she said softly. "Nothing special." Her father raised an eyebrow, his eyes scanning her face. He knew something was off, but Amara didn't want to tell him. Not yet. But that night, as she lay in bed, the quiet kept her awake. She couldn't stop thinking about the faces at school, the laughter, the way Sasha had looked at her like she was nothing. She closed her eyes, wishing she could just disappear. But deep inside, she felt something growing. a fire, a feeling that this silence wouldn't last forever. And she was right. The next day at school, Amara knew things wouldn't be any better. The whispers, the sneers, the mocking stares, they were all still there, following her like shadows. But today, there was something different in the air. It was as if everyone was waiting for her to break. Amara felt the weight of their eyes, but she didn't let it show. She didn't look at anyone. She kept her head down and walked to class like it was just another day. But as soon as she entered the classroom, something changed. Sasha was sitting in the front row, talking to her friends. When she saw Amara, she smirked. She stood up, her voice cutting through the room. "Hey, Amara," she called. "I saw you eating that sad lunch yesterday. You're really not going to talk to anyone. What's wrong? Afraid to make friends?" The room went silent. All eyes were on Amara. Some students snickered. Others waited for her to say something, anything. But Amara just looked at Sasha. Her face was calm, her eyes steady. "I don't need to make friends," she said quietly, her voice so soft that only a few people heard her. "I'm fine on my own." Sasha blinked in surprise. She had expected Amara to back down, to get embarrassed. But she didn't. For a moment, there was an uncomfortable silence. Then Sasha laughed. A cruel sound. "Whatever. You'll get over it. Everyone always does." She sat back down, clearly irritated. Amara returned to her seat without saying another word. She could feel the weight of their eyes, but she didn't flinch. Later that day, during lunch, things took a darker turn. Sasha, along with her friends, walked up to Amara's table again. This time, they weren't just mocking her. This time, they were planning something worse. "Hey, Amara," Sasha called, her tone sweet but fake. "How about we have some fun?" Before Amara could react, one of the girls grabbed her lunchbox off the table and threw it across the room. The sandwich and fruit spilled onto the floor. Students around them started laughing. Some even took out their phones to record. Amara sat frozen for a moment. Her hands clenched into fists, but she didn't move. Her eyes stayed on the mess on the floor. Sasha stood with a smug smile, clearly enjoying the chaos she'd caused. "Oops, did I ruin your lunch? I guess you'll just have to eat the floor, huh?" she mocked. Amara slowly stood up. Her hands were shaking, but her face remained calm. She didn't look angry. She didn't look sad. She looked unbothered. Amara bent down and started picking up the spilled food, placing it carefully back into her lunchbox. The laughter around her grew louder. One of Sasha's friends whispered, "She's so weird. Why isn't she crying?" Another added, "She's not even fighting back. It's like she doesn't care." Amara had finished picking up the last piece of fruit, standing up slowly. She glanced around the room, her eyes meeting the faces of the students who were still watching. And then, without saying a word, she turned and walked out of the cafeteria. At home that night, Amara walked through the door, her face pale. She didn't look angry, but there was something different in her eyes, something tired, like she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. Her father looked up from his work when she entered. He noticed the change in her immediately. "Amara," he asked, his voice low with concern. "What happened?" Amara didn't answer right away. She set her bag down and sat quietly on the couch. "It's fine, Dad," she said, her voice soft. "It's just school stuff." Her father didn't buy it. He could see the bruises, hidden deep in her eyes. The silence wasn't the same as before. It was broken. "No," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "I can tell something's wrong." "What happened?" Amara sighed, looking up at him. "They made fun of me again. But it's okay, Dad. I'm fine. I can handle it." Her father didn't respond at first. He just stared at her, his face unreadable. Then, after a long silence, he stood up. "Amara," he said slowly, "I'm proud of you for staying calm. But you don't have to handle this alone." He walked to the window and looked out for a moment, his back turned to her. Amara could feel the tension in the room. Her father had always been the strong one, the protector. He turned to face her again. "You're not alone. And those who think they can hurt you, they don't know who they're messing with." Amara didn't understand at first, but as she looked into his eyes, she knew. There was something about her father she hadn't fully understood before. He wasn't just a quiet man. He wasn't just a caring father. He was someone important. "Don't worry, Dad," Amara said, a small smile tugging at her lips. "I'll be okay." But her father's eyes were serious. "You'll be more than okay. Trust me." The next morning, Amara woke up to the usual sounds of the city outside her window. Cars honked, people shouted, and the world seemed to move too fast. But today, she felt something different, something in the air. Her father had been quiet after their conversation last night. He didn't say much, but Amara could tell he was planning something. She didn't know what it was, but she could feel it. At school, things were no different. Sasha and her friends were waiting for her at the entrance, just like always. They stared as she passed by, whispering loudly enough for her to hear. "Here comes the weird girl," Sasha said with a sneer. "Let's see if she talks today." Amara ignored them, keeping her head low. She walked to class, trying to block out the noise, trying to stay calm. But she couldn't stop the feeling that something was about to happen. In class, Amara couldn't focus. Every time she glanced up, Sasha's eyes were on her. It felt like a trap was slowly closing in on her. And then, the bell rang for lunch. Amara headed to the cafeteria, but as she entered, she saw something that stopped her in her tracks. There, at the table where she usually sat, was Sasha. And in front of her, sitting quietly, was someone Amara had never seen before. A man. Tall, broad-shouldered, his face was calm, but there was something powerful about him. Sasha saw Amara and smiled. "Oh, look who decided to show up. We were just talking about you." The man turned to look at Amara. His eyes narrowed for a moment as if he was studying her. Then, he stood up slowly, walking towards her. Amara froze. "Amara," the man said in a deep, calm voice, "I think we need to talk." Her heart raced. She knew this man. Somehow she knew, but she couldn't place him. The man looked back at Sasha, who was still smirking. "You've had your fun, but now it's time for the grown-ups to handle this." Sasha's smirk faltered. "Who are you?" "I'm her father," the man said simply, "and I suggest you leave my daughter alone." For a moment, the cafeteria went silent. No one moved. Everyone stared at Amara and her father, shocked by the sudden turn of events. Sasha's friends backed away, not sure what to say. But Sasha stood her ground. "What, you think you can come here and scare me?" She laughed, but it was weak, unsure. "You think you can stop me from having a little fun?" Amara's father didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence was enough. "I'm not here to scare anyone. But I'll make it clear, if you keep bullying my daughter, you'll regret it." Sasha blinked, surprised by the calmness in his voice. For the first time, she didn't know how to respond. "I've warned you," her father continued. "Now I'm telling you, leave her alone." Sasha didn't say anything else. She stared at Amara's father, unsure whether to back down or keep fighting. Finally, she turned away. "Whatever," she muttered. "This isn't over." But Amara's father didn't move. He stood there, watching Sasha and her friends leave the cafeteria. Only then did he look down at Amara, his eyes softening. "Are you okay?" he asked. Amara looked at him, a mix of relief and surprise in her eyes. I don't understand. How did you know?" Her father gave a small smile. "I know a lot of things. I've been keeping an eye on you." Amara shook her head. "But I didn't even tell you about what happened." "How did you?" "I've been watching Amara," he said. "I may be quiet, but I know when something isn't right. And I knew those girls were going too far." Amara's heart began to calm. She hadn't expected her father to be so powerful, so sure of himself. She had always seen him as quiet, reserved. But today, he had shown her something different. Her father put his hand on her shoulder. "From now on, I'm here. And no one is going to hurt you." Later that evening after dinner, Amara sat in her room, thinking about the events of the day. Her father had made it clear that he would protect her, but there was something else in his eyes, something that made her wonder. She heard him on the phone again, speaking in low tones. She couldn't hear everything, but she caught a few words. "It's time. We need to act quickly. No more waiting." Amara felt a strange sense of curiosity. Who was her father really? What was it that he had been waiting for? But she didn't ask him, not yet. There was still something about the way he had stood in front of her today, calm, powerful, that made her feel both safe and uneasy. The days after the incident in the cafeteria felt different for Amara. It wasn't just because her father had stepped in and stopped the bullying. It was something else, something deeper. Sasha and her friends no longer bothered her during school. They kept their distance, their faces tight with annoyance every time Amara walked by. But despite the relief, Amara couldn't shake the feeling that things weren't over. Her father had made a promise, but Amara wasn't sure what kind of world she had stepped into. That night, as she sat in her room, she heard her father on the phone again. This time, his words were more urgent. "Tomorrow, we can't wait any longer. They're getting too close." Amara's heart skipped a beat. Who was he talking to? She stood up from her bed and crept toward the door, trying to listen. "I don't care what it takes. If they think they can destroy everything we've worked for, they're wrong." Her father's voice was low and steady, but there was a hint of anger underneath. "We'll finish this, one way or another." Amara froze. She had never heard her father speak like this before. He sounded different. The conversation ended with a sharp click, and Amara quickly backed away from the door, her heart racing. The next day at school, things felt tense. The usual noise in the hallways seemed muted, as if everyone was holding their breath. Amara couldn't help but feel like something was about to happen. During lunch, she sat quietly at her usual table, pushing her food around on her plate. She kept her head down, trying not to draw attention to herself. Then, without warning, the door to the cafeteria slammed open. Amara looked up, startled. Several men entered, dressed in black suits. They walked through the room with purpose, their eyes scanning the students as if they were looking for something or someone. The room fell silent. The cafeteria was filled with whispers and nervous glances as the men moved to the back. Amara's heart began to pound. One of the men, tall and broad-shouldered, approached her table. His face was calm, but there was something about him that sent a chill down Amara's spine. "You're Amara, right?" he asked in a low voice. Amara nodded, her throat dry. "Yes." "I need you to come with us," he said simply. Amara stood up, not sure if she should be scared or confused. "What do you mean? Where are we going?" "We have business with your father," the man said. His tone was neutral, but there was something about it that made her stomach twist. Amara felt her pulse quicken. "My father? What's going on?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned and motioned for her to follow. Without saying anything more, Amara stood up and walked with him, her mind racing. When they reached the parking lot, Amara saw her father standing near a sleek black car. His face was unreadable, his arms crossed as he watched her approach. "Dad?" Amara called, her voice trembling. "What's going on? Who are these people?" Her father turned to face her. There was a brief pause, and then he spoke, his voice firm. "Amara, I didn't want to have to tell you like this, but it's time you knew the truth." The men in suits stood by, waiting. "What truth?" Amara asked, feeling her stomach drop. Her father stepped closer to her. "Amara, I'm not just a regular man. I'm not just your father. There's a reason we've moved around so much, a reason I've kept quiet about my past." Amara's eyes widened. "What do you mean?" "I've worked for people you don't know. Powerful people. People who protect others, but also sometimes people who deal with dangerous situations. And now, those people are looking for us." Amara shook her head. This couldn't be real. "No, no, you're not like that. You're my dad." Her father's face softened, but his eyes were hard. "I know, baby. But the world I come from isn't safe. And when you're in that world, things can get complicated." Amara felt dizzy. "What does that have to do with me? I don't want anything to do with that world." "I know you don't," her father said quietly. "But you're involved now. They found us, and we have to leave before it's too late." The men in suits began to move toward the car. "Dad, wait," Amara said, grabbing his arm. "Who's after us? Why are we leaving? What's going on?" Her father looked down at her, his face filled with regret. "You're not safe here, Amara. I should have told you sooner, but I thought I could protect you from all of this. But I can't anymore. Amara's head was spinning. Her whole world was turning upside down. The father she had always known, the calm, kind man who had always been there for her, was someone she didn't recognize anymore. Who are these people? She asked again, her voice shaking. Her father took a deep breath, his eyes darkening. They're part of my past. The past I try to forget, but I can't run from it anymore. He turned and motioned for her to get in the car. It's time we leave this place, Amara. Things are about to get very dangerous. Amara stood frozen for a moment, the weight of his words crashing down on her. This was bigger than she had ever imagined, and now she had to decide, would she follow her father into the unknown, or would she try to fight the life that was being forced upon her? Amara stood frozen in the parking lot, her father's words echoing in her mind. He had told her things she couldn't fully understand. Her whole life, everything she thought she knew was crumbling. The man she had always known as her father was now someone different, someone with a past she didn't know existed. For a moment, she just stared at him, unsure of what to do. The car was waiting, the men in suits standing silently beside it. Her father reached out, his hand gentle but firm. Amara, please, we don't have much time. She looked up at him, searching his face for the calm, loving man she had always known. But what she saw now was someone desperate, someone burdened by secrets. Amara took a step back. I don't understand. Why didn't you tell me about all of this? Her father's face softened, and he sighed. I wanted to protect you, Amara. I didn't want you to have to deal with the dangers of my past, but I can't keep you in the dark anymore. It's too dangerous. But I'm just a kid, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't know anything about that world. You don't have to know it, but it's here now, and it's not going away. Her father's voice was steady, but there was a hint of pain in his eyes. The people after us, they won't stop. They never do. Amara's heart was racing. Her mind was spinning. She wanted to stay in her safe world, to forget everything her father had just told her. But she couldn't. She couldn't ignore the truth that was right in front of her. Amara, her father said softly, his voice full of regret. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I need you to trust me. We have to leave now. If we don't, they'll come for us, and they won't stop until they get what they want. The words hit her like a cold wave. She had never felt so lost, so alone. But deep down, she knew her father wasn't lying. He wasn't the type to make up stories. There was something dangerous out there, and it was coming for them. She looked at the men in suits, who were now standing silently by the car, waiting for her. She glanced back at her father, whose face was filled with worry. A wave of fear washed over her, but also something else, something she hadn't felt before. Courage. Amara took a deep breath. What do we do? Her father's face softened. We leave, Amara. We go, and we do whatever it takes to stay safe. He held out his hand to her. This is the only chance we have. For a moment, Amara hesitated. The decision was terrifying. Her whole life had been turned upside down, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to face whatever was coming. But she looked at her father's face again, at the man who had always taken care of her, always kept her safe. She had no choice. She took his hand. I'll do it, Amara said, her voice steady now, though her heart still pounded in her chest. Her father gave her a small, grateful smile. Thank you, Amara. I promise you, we'll get through this. Together. The car ride felt long and silent. Amara sat next to her father, staring out the window as the world passed by. Her mind was still spinning with everything that had happened, the bullying at school, the strange men in suits, and the sudden terrifying change in her life. But there was something else in her father's eyes that gave her a sense of reassurance, even in the midst of the chaos. He was no longer the quiet man she had known before. He was someone else now, someone who had been through things she couldn't even imagine, and somehow, he was going to protect her. As the car sped down the road, Amara glanced over at her father, who was looking ahead, his face unreadable. She wanted to ask him more questions, wanted to understand everything he had kept hidden for so long, but she didn't know where to start. Instead, she whispered, "Where are we going?" Her father's eyes softened, but there was a hint of sadness in his expression. "I don't know yet, Amara, But wherever it is, we'll be okay. We'll figure it out. Amara nodded, though she still didn't feel entirely sure. But one thing was clear: her life would never be the same again. The road ahead was uncertain, but as long as her father was by her side, she knew she had a chance. The car raced down the dark, empty road. Amara sat in the passenger seat, her hands gripping the armrest tightly. Her heart was pounding. She didn't know exactly where they were going, but her father's face told her everything she needed to know. This was the final step. They had spent days running, hiding, and planning, and now they were heading to a place where Amara would finally learn the truth about her father's past. "I don't like this, Dad," Amara said quietly, her voice shaky. "I don't know what's going to happen." Her father didn't look at her, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "I know, Amara, but we've run out of options. This is the only way." Amara swallowed hard, trying to push down the fear rising in her chest. They were on their way to meet the man her father had worked with, a man who could either help them or make things much worse. But her father had no choice. The danger was too great. They couldn't run anymore. After what felt like hours, they pulled up to a secluded warehouse on the edge of town. The place looked abandoned, dark windows staring out at the world like empty eyes. "Stay in the car," her father said, his voice low. "I'll handle this." "Dad, please. I'm not staying here. I'm coming with you," Amara said firmly. Her father hesitated for a moment, then sighed. "Fine, but stay close, and whatever happens, don't get involved." Amara nodded, her eyes full of determination. She couldn't just sit back and wait, not anymore. They got out of the car and walked toward the warehouse, the only sound their footsteps echoing in the quiet night. Her father knocked 3 times on the heavy door, his movements calculated and careful. A few seconds later, the door creaked open, and a man in his mid-40s appeared. His face was hard, his eyes cold and watchful. "Caleb," the man said, his voice low. "John," her father replied, "we need to talk." John stepped aside, motioning for them to enter. The warehouse was dimly lit, with shadows stretching across the floor. Amara felt the weight of the place press down on her. Everything about it screamed danger. They walked inside, and John closed the door behind them. "I don't have much time," John said, his voice sharp. "What do you want?" "We're in trouble," her father said. "Big trouble. They're still after us, and I need your help to get out of this." John eyed them both, his gaze flicking to Amara. "You brought her." "I had no choice," her father replied. "She's involved now." John looked at Amara for a moment, his expression unreadable. "Fine," he said finally. "But I don't do favors. What's in this for me?" Her father took a deep breath. "You help me, and I'll get you out of this mess. We'll leave the country. Whatever you want, just help us survive." John nodded slowly. "All right, but it won't be easy. There are people looking for you, Caleb, and they won't stop until they get what they want." Amara's heart skipped a beat. "What do they want?" John turned his gaze to her, his face hardening. "They want your father back in the game, and they won't stop until they get him." Her father clenched his fists. "I'm done with that life. I can't go back." John's eyes narrowed. "I know, but they don't care. They'll kill anyone who gets in their way." A silence fell over the room, heavy and suffocating. Amara's mind was spinning. Her father had been part of something terrible, something that was still hunting them. And now, they had nowhere to hide. "I don't know what to do anymore," her father said quietly, almost to himself. "I can't protect you from them forever, Amara." Amara looked up at him, her heart aching for him. "We'll figure it out, Dad, together." Her father met her gaze, his face softening. For a moment, the tough, determined man she had seen these past few days seemed like the father she had always known, the man who had always protected her. But before he could speak, a loud crash came from the back of the warehouse. Amara's heart leaped into her throat. "They're here," John said, his voice sharp. "Get ready." Her father grabbed Amara's arm. "Stay close. Don't let go of me." The door at the back of the warehouse burst open, and men in dark suits stormed in. Amara recognized them from the pictures her father had shown her, the same people who had been hunting them for weeks. "We've got you now," one of them said, his voice cold and threatening. Amara's father stepped forward, his fists clenched. "Leave us alone," he growled. "I'm done with you. You'll never have me again." But the men didn't back down. One of them raised a gun, pointing it directly at her father. "No!" Amara screamed, stepping forward instinctively. Her father pushed her back, standing tall between her and the men. "You'll have to go through me first." The tension in the room was unbearable. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, as if on cue, the sound of sirens echoed outside. The men froze, their eyes darting toward the door. John, who had been standing silently, nodded. "Time to go." In an instant, the warehouse erupted into chaos. The men scrambled to escape, but her father's old friend, John, was already one step ahead. The sirens were a distraction, a signal that they had one chance to escape. Amara's father pulled her toward the door. "Go, now." They ran, their feet pounding against the cold ground. The sound of footsteps behind them grew louder, but Amara didn't look back. All that mattered was getting out. They reached the car, and her father slammed the door shut. "We're not safe yet," he said, his voice strained. "But we will be. I'll make sure of it." Amara could barely breathe, her body trembling from the rush of adrenaline. As they drove away, she looked at her father, his face set with determination. For the first time in weeks, Amara felt a small spark of hope. They had made it through the worst, but as they disappeared into the night, Amara knew one thing for sure. Their fight wasn't over, but no matter what happened next, they would face it together.